the Sundays when I have time on my hands, I love to take time cooking. And I also like to have my friends over and maybe do something a little more special than usual. And that's what I'm doing today, Osso Buco, which is a very classic Italian preparation. And I am using veal shanks. And they are beautifully cut from the butcher here. Get rid of this paper. And all I need to do first is season the meat. Get some salt and pepper on there. I'm going to get my pan heated. This is one of those things that takes absolutely no time to get prepped and that it cooks for a while, but not so long as a typical preparation. Ordinarily, you will see Osso Buco when you get it at a restaurant. It's typically cut a lot thicker than this. I actually like to cut it thinner because why? It takes less time to cook, and I like a smaller piece. When I first learned how to make this dish in Italy from a Milanese woman, Diana, she liked to cut it thin too. And I find that frequently with some of the cooks that I've met in Italy, they don't have these big giant cuts of fish and meat that we have here. I mean, sometimes they do. All right, a little bit of salt and pepper, and then some finely ground flour. Just a great little technique if you can. You can buy this finely ground flour that's sold actually for gravy, and it's just a really great thing to have a very light dusting. And then get them turned over and do the same thing on the other side. With this dish, I'm going to have a classic accompaniment, risotto. So if you're a little shy about making risotto, you're going to have to stick around and see how that's done too. Then just a little bit of salt and pepper. I like it old school. This is a very old-fashioned preparation and classic. And classics, boy, they never go out of fashion. Okay, a little bit more of the flour, and then we are good to go. We're going to go over to our pan, heat it up, and I use a combination of olive oil and butter. And of course, there's a reason for that. Butter will burn first, but if I get some olive oil in the pan and then get the butter in there, about 2 tablespoons of each, the olive oil will temper the pot and then the butter won't be so likely to burn. And I just don't want burning butter. That's great. Now I'm gonna turn the pan up, just swirl it around a little bit and get the veal shanks into the pan. And you wanna really hear a nice sizzle when it goes in there. This is definitely a special dish for me. I don't cook veal that often. And in fact, my husband, who's become a really great shopper these days, he will go once a week to the grocery store to do the family shopping. And now and then he'll come back with a specialty ingredient that he's craving. So while that's cooking away, I'm gonna get going on something called gremolata, which is a classic preparation, and it's a really nice thing to have here. So we're gonna slowly braise the veal shanks. They're gonna be falling off the bone, soft and savory. And gremolata is actually something that you sprinkle on afterwards, fresh. And it's made up of parsley, which I'm chopping here about 3 tablespoons of parsley. And make sure you get it, you know, not super fine, but it is definitely something that you want to have well chopped. All right, I think that looks good. Maybe one more little bit. And then put it into a bowl and move on to orange zest and lemon. But first I'm going to take a look and see how we're doing over here, because I want it to be slightly golden, but not dark brown. Well, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and turn these because we want them beautifully browned on both sides. Oh yeah, that's great. Let's see if this one, yep. That's where you get all the flavor. You brown it in your pot, give it a little bit of time, and the flour seals it in, and in the end, that flour is also going to act as a little bit of a thickener once the liquid hits it. The zest of an orange, just use a zester. If you don't have a zester, you can just peel it off with a knife and then just finely mince it. You basically want to have a good tablespoon of orange zest. I just love using the zest of any citrus in my cooking. I think it's great. I think it's a real different flavor. Same with lemon. And then the last thing in this gremolata is garlic. And that's just something to have. Just put it aside, get it done in advance. Get these little jobs done while your meat is browning and while it's braising. All right, parsley, lemon, and orange zest all ready. Back to my veal shanks just to see if we've got some browning, because if we do, then it's going to be time to go ahead and add the wine. Yeah, that's nicely browned. So I want 2½ cups of white wine. And white wine's important. It really is something that's a much more kind of gentle flavor than the red wine. A lot of the times I don't mind if you use white or you use red. And I am just going to pull this off the heat while I add my wine. Because it's going to really blaze up. Let that get a little bit bubbly. When you're working on a gas flame and you use alcohol, you have to be very careful. All right, let's let that just cook down a little bit. Put the top on, bring it over, get this flame back on, bring it over. And I'm going to turn it down to low. Just let some of the steam barely escape while I go on and finish. I have 3 cloves of garlic. The garlic just gets minced. And because this is going on raw at the end as a little bit of a flavor lifter, you don't want big chunks of garlic. You really have to take your time here and mince your garlic. My garlic is very finely chopped here. 3 cloves. And I am putting it in here with the zest of 1 lemon, 1 orange, and about 3 tablespoons of parsley. And I'm just going to give this a stir. This is called gremolata, and it's a wonderful topping for our Osso Buco. It just adds the most glorious fresh color and scent, the little bit of garlic for some deep flavor. So we'll just put this aside while I move on. And our Osso Buco, which has been simmering away here in white wine, I believe is ready to turn. Step back while I take off the top. Oh, it smells superb. Now, you want to cook it for 30 minutes in the braising liquid and then turn it like I'm doing now. And after 30 minutes, you have to start tasting. It could be done, or it could need a little more time, because basically this is a cut of meat that you want to make sure is nice and tender all the way through. You don't want any difficulty cutting through this meat. So it just depends on your pan, your stove, your meat, the cut, all those things. That's the reason why when it comes to cooking, you have to just a little bit of common sense, and don't be afraid to stray from a recipe so that you can get what you need. And here, what you need is a very tender piece of meat. All right, I'm going to give that another bit of time to cook. Oh my goodness, that smells so great. Now remember our gremolata? This just gets put over top of each shank. And the smell of the citrus after tasting that lovely savory liquid is extraordinary. It's so amazing. All right, I like to just serve this right out of the pot. Not necessarily at the table family style, but I'll just bring everything buffet style in the kitchen and get all my plates ready and serve it from there.